Ultimately, what happens is the whole of Yoga Sutra can actually be summarized in the first 4 sutras. So many times I just focus on the first 4 sutras. And if we really learn the first 4 sutras properly, we get the whole essence of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So the first one, he said, is the discipline of yoga has begun. So hoping that you have the qualification and the time has come in your life, you started the teachings of yoga. So that was the first one. The second is where the ultimate stage of yoga was pointed as the final stage of Ashtanga, which is samadhi, was pointed out. How, when you say that yoga is a cessation of thought modification. What is this is that, see, my notion of everything, is based on my conceptual thinking. So if I'm here, I'm not there. If I am here, if this is black and then this is white, or if this is pure good and that is bad. So these are the notions with which how we all operate in our daily life. Like I like somebody, I don't like somebody. This person is good, that person is bad. So this is a constant aspect of the labeling that the mind is going through. So when this comes to an end, meaning that sense of conceptual activity of the mind comes to an end, that is the chitta vritti nirodha. The thought modifications have come to an end. Meaning we are not driven by samskaras at that point, But it is not it's not that you're there, meaning you still have to go attain the kaivalya. So that it is pointed out in the last 3rd sutra. Tada drishtu swarupe avastha. The seer abides in one's true nature, meaning the consciousness, purusha, is now free. So the 3 sutras more or less summarize. Now the 4th sutra, he starts the teaching, meaning if this has not been attained, then what? Then you have to do Ashtanga. You have to undertake the 8 limbs, 8 steps of yoga. Okay, so these are the main points of Yoga Sutra. What is the question is, she writes that if the goal of yoga is samadhi, then I just have to master dhyana yoga only and not other paths such as bhakti yoga, karma yoga, and gnana yoga. If the goal of yoga is samadhi. So firstly, I have to tell you that the goal of yoga is not actually samadhi. The goal of yoga is actually what is called as kaivalya, right? We discussed this, where kaivalya, we have gone through this chapter, but anyway, I'll quickly just mention. See, the kaivalya, as I mentioned, is where the consciousness realizes its true nature, meaning I now have the feeling I'm the body. I have the feeling that, I am this human, this male, this one Swami and all that, right? So this is my wrong identifications. Why? Because like when I'm sleeping, I don't have the sense that I'm so and so, right? So this is where my identity has got mixed up. My true identity is not that, and that is the purpose of really the yoga as a philosophy. But yes, you can say that when you look at the Ashtanga steps he gives, he writes that dharana, dhyana, and samadhi as the later stages. But how do you come to that? You have to practice the other steps also. You have to practice yama, niyama. You have to practice asana, pranayama, and pratyahara, all that, right? So what is so again, to come back here, what happens if, what is the goal? The goal is that we want to find that ultimate happiness, and that is what kaivalya is leading us to. So that is why I was explaining before, see, if we take it as isolation, and especially Now with all this COVID times, the word isolation is like threatening to people, right? So that is not the goal. It seems like a joyless kind of thing. The joy in yoga is that when you realize that, see, like if you're caught up in a busy street, you have to walk through all that. There's so many people around you, and then you come back home, you're so relieved, right? Or if you are with somebody, there is always some pressure. You may say something that might offend him or her. But if you are out there in nature or somewhere by yourself, that sense of having to deal with something which is changing, which is subject to change, is not there, because you're there in your own. So there's a certain joy there, as long as you are not unhappy being out by yourself. It is the most trouble-free state, that lack of having to do all these interactions. So that joy, that is the ultimate joy, where we don't have any unfulfilled task, any desires. See, even this thing I was telling you, right? Like the child which was at home had this small desire, had this desire. I want to go out and play, you know. So moment that desire came, then what happened? That child is actually kind of lost, that when that desire has come, that there is a certain restlessness in that child. So same thing, like if I'm sitting here at my home, or let's say I'm sitting here by Ganga and just enjoying the nature. But let's say some thought comes to my mind and I think of some food, like samosa or pizza or whatever, Then what happens that even though I'm enjoying sitting by nature, by Ganga, I'm not happy anymore. Why? Because I feel I need to fulfill something now, And so the cause of the desire itself is the cause of unfulfillment, unhappiness, So now the problem is, once the desire has come, then you don't have a choice. You have to do something to deal with that desire, work out that desire. This is what the steps of yoga is taking us through, so that we don't have to suffer the consequences, but find a way to work with that desire. How? Through karma yoga, through bhakti yoga, and all that. So now when you say that only dhyana yoga is important, see this aspect of dhyana yoga, when we say, it's not just even sitting in meditation alone. Even to be able to sit in meditation, you have to have some fundamentals of sadhana correctly. So the what you are talking about, the 4 yogas, that is more taken from the Bhagavad Gita, the 4 different things, In its own way, Patanjali also integrates that, how when he talks about bhakti, he integrates where he says Ishvara Pranidhana, the important aspect of Ishvara. As such, generally the word yoga is used as yuj dhatu, means union of something which is lower with higher, jivatma with paramatma and all that. But Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, where it is said it's samadhi, yoga is samadhi, he said, right? So he has given a slightly different definition to yoga as samadhi. What does he mean is that samadhi, as I mentioned, is of 2 kinds. One is samprajñata samadhi and the other is asamprajñata samadhi. In samprajñata samadhi, there is still knowledge, meaning you focus on some aspect of prakriti. There is samprajña, meaning with knowledge, with the object. You focus on some object. So it could be your Ishta Devata, it could be a mantra, it could be something. So you attain that union with that object of your focus. So you retain that. That is samprajñata samadhi. Asamprajñata samadhi is where that object collapses. And that is when the chitta vritti nirodha happens, because you're not holding to any object. So what happens? temporarily there you that sense of all the samskaras drop. But samadhi is nothing but, in one way, it is like going to sleep, Why? Because when you wake up in the morning, you have again all the same, whatever habits, thoughts, memories. So samadhi is also not, doesn't necessarily mean it is the end. But samadhi is a very high state. So once you reach samadhi, you are you are much more purer. So that is the aspect. In order to reach samadhi, you also have to give up all the siddhis, meaning you are not just trying to have some powers, all the yogic powers also you have to relinquish. Okay, so but important thing to understand is that samadhi also is not the ultimate stage. The ultimate stage, the path that whole Patanjali was trying to focus on, what is called as Viveka Khyati. That notes was shared in the group the last session. Somebody had done that, and that notes, it shared from one of the classes, Viveka Khyati. What is a Viveka Khyati? Yes, is wisdom, discernment. What is the discernment between? The discernment is between consciousness and matter. So samadhi is just one of the means, and it is the final stage of Ashtanga, but the Ashtanga is also a path. Okay. Why are we doing this path? Because, see, first, at a very practical level, as a human being, as a person, I have a certain kind of diseased sense of self, right? This is, I mentioned, I have, see, some problem or something we all have, right? We all have either anger issues or anxiety about something, worries about something, fears about something. So even if you don't have any fears in this life, there are some fears from previous lives. And there also is a cause of what is called as abhinivesha, one of the kleshas. Fear of death is one of the kleshas, it is said. Then there are other kleshas too, right? Like avidya is one klesha, asmita, ego is another klesha, raga dvesha is another klesha, meaning attraction, repulsion. So these are the emotions we have. And this is why we have to work constantly, So that is a point. So idea is to overcome kleshas. So first, kleshas, we recognize we have kleshas. And these kleshas are the cause of our suffering. If we don't recognize that the kleshas are the cause of our suffering, then we will always keep identifying people, situations, surroundings as the cause of our suffering, And that is how worldly people live, right? They will never want to change or do anything. So here what is happening is, a yogi is not so much interested in constantly changing the world, He's interested in breaking free from all his mental patterns, samskaras, kleshas. Why? Because once he's free from kleshas, then that desires which was sending him outward will no longer cause him problem.